My name is Ruben Barrera. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a county building official, and so I oversee the building and safety division. And I've been very involved with the proposed changes that we're going to be taking to the Board of Supervisors in September. And we have Stephanie Silva in our Newberry Park office, who's going to be helping us go through the VCBC and the agenda on the screen. Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. So
I just want to also note that we're recording the meeting via Teams, just so that everyone's aware of that.
There's a request for taking the names of everybody who works for the county that is here today, and if we can maybe self-introduce yourselves for the rest of us that don't know who we are. So we'll start over here with Marina.
My name's Marina Porsche. I'm an assistant county counsel, and I provide advisory support to building and safety.
I'm John Mead. I work with the planning department on the plan.
Genji Miata, land development specialist in our development group. Michael LaFrake, engineer 3, building and safety.
Keith Perfect, building inspector 3, specialist plumbing mechanical.
Martha,
I'm a member of the press.
Okay.
Being head of the compliance division, and we enforce the building code, including the international property maintenance code.
Joe Murley, and I'm the county fire marshal.
Okay. And if you could just remember to speak up a little bit so that, because we are recording the meeting and, this mic, it's good, but you need to speak up a little bit. And Stephanie will remind us when she can't hear what we are saying. Okay, so welcome everybody. I wanted to first go over a summary of the code adoption process because not everybody's familiar with that. And I'm just going to run through it in just a very few, maybe 3-4 minutes. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer any questions about that. Generally, the VCBC is the local code that formally adopts the state building standards codes. And I'll explain to you what those are, and adopts any additional codes and amendments to those codes for enforcement here in Ventura County for all private construction projects, buildings and structures in the unincorporated area of Ventura County. Okay, so the VCBC that we're using right now is a 2022 edition, and we'll be using this one through the end of the year. The new edition of the building code is a 2025 VCBC that becomes effective for new permit applications submitted on or after January 1st, 2026. So I'll talk a little bit more about when those dates are going to be for the hearings by the Board of Supervisors who will formally adopt the new 2025 code. But that's our code. And so the process to adopt new standards is a 3 years. It works on a 3-year cycle. So every 3 years, we adopt a new code. That's why we're now working on the 22. The next one is 3 years later, the 2025. And the one after that will be the 2028, et cetera. So every 3 years, we take the state building standards codes and we amend them and make them the latest edition of the VCBC, Ventura County Building Code. And that's what we enforce for our projects. Okay. So the building standards codes, that's a formal term for the state codes that include the building code, the plumbing, electrical, and mechanical codes, the green building code, the energy conservation code, the historical buildings code. Let's see, what am I missing? There's now going to be the wildland urban interface code. That's a new code. I'll talk more about that in a second. And those are all different types of codes that regulate different parts of construction, whether it's a mechanical system or the electrical system or the structural system of the building. There are different codes, and they regulate the use and the occupancy and construction of these buildings. So all of those codes are known as the California Building Standards Codes. We adopt those and we must enforce those by law. And we can only amend those for good reason, to amend them with local amendments that are necessary here for Ventura County. So the state is very very restrictive about what we can adopt in our local code that modifies the state codes. They don't want every city and county in the state to come up with their own standards. So they say, use this code, and if you want to amend it, it's got to be a really good reason. And that reason they give us is that we have to have a local climatic, geologic, or topographic condition in Ventura County that warrants any amendment to the state codes. And if we have such a condition, then we can modify it, we can amend it. So one example might be if we want to have more restrictive home hardening requirements for fire safety. One of the reasons is that we have lots of canyons and hillsides in the area, and during the hot summer months that are dry and sometimes windy, you have very high fire hazard conditions, and that's all climate and topography, right? And we need to have extraordinary provisions in our code to address those conditions locally. So that's just an example. So anything related to either one of those three conditions, climatic or topographic or geologic conditions. And then the other thing that the state says is that we cannot make any amendments to the state code that are less restrictive than the state code. In other words, if we find a climatic condition that warrants an amendment, we can make the state code a little bit more restrictive, but we can't make it less restrictive. Okay. Now, there are some things in the Ventura County Building Code that may not necessarily constitute building standard. They may not be a building standard. For example, we have provisions here that are related to the process that we use for doing damage assessment of buildings that are damaged or destroyed after an event. It could be a natural disaster, or it could be just a regular fire. And so we post the buildings with a red placard or a yellow placard, depending on the condition. And so all of those provisions are in the Ventura County Building Code also, but those are not technically building standards. So it's the building standards that we have to follow those restrictive provisions of the state before we can amend them. Okay, does anybody have any questions so far? And by the way, this is a very informal meeting, even though we have stuff handing out. If you have any questions at any time, just raise your hand and I'll be glad to address them. Yes.
People, does the county put out specific conditions, or do they just put out like the letter A, B, or C and say, this is what we're doing? So it seems like in the past cycles, it's gone to the council and then it just A, B, or C. We don't know what the condition was.
Oh, I see.
That caused that to be geologic, climatic, or topographic.
Yeah, so there are a lot of, yes. Okay, so what you're referring to is what type of a condition, or what are the specifics of that condition that warrant that change? So let me back up a little bit. A lot of the changes that are in the VCBC they're not new. Even those in the 2012 VCBC are carried over from past cycles. And unless we are told that a certain condition doesn't exist, then we just leave them in there and we carry them forward. Now, those conditions can be like the soils condition. So for example, if you have, I don't want to belabor the point. If it's a geologic condition that warrants a change in the structural requirements, we don't get into all those details, explaining everything in a lot of detail for the board. We understand that the Building Standards Commission does not require that we have all of that. It's up to the jurisdiction to decide what we present to the board. And if the board is comfortable with the information we're giving them at the public hearings, then they'll adopt the provision. Generally, what we've done here, at least in the last 10 years or so, is we just describe the type of condition that we're using to support that proposed change. So we might say this particular change is related to geology. And maybe, sometimes, and that table that you're referring to that describes it as an A, B, or C, or D is a code that references the type of condition. So sometimes it's pretty obvious. Sometimes it's not that obvious. I agree. But, we're glad to help you with, answering those questions on any one of those specific items. But you're right, sometimes it's just a little unclear, but most of them fall into one of those categories, either climatic or geologic.
A follow-up on that. Maybe county council can look into that because it appears that amendments require a specific condition relative to Ventura County. So I get what you say that from 2022, 2019, we have different conditions, what have you, but there's no, I can't go back and find out why that got implemented way back then. I just that it was a climactic condition in Ventura County that is so much different than the entire codes of thousands of pages the state put out. I don't see where that squares.
Yeah, so
I mean, we should be able to get a copy of that, like we get that chart, we go, okay, see, then we'll go over here and we'll look, climactic conditional. What was that caused us to be so different here in the county to put this extra regulation on the people?
okay, very good, thank you. Okay, we'll look into that. Okay, anything else?
And as far as building standards, could you call out in the VCBC, which ones are building standards? I mean, how do we differentiate as the people as to which ones are just building standards that probably county council might understand should be in another ordinance versus being, I mean, this is the building standards ordinance. So I just wonder if why we're scrambling.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to do that, and we're just using the state guidelines on that. The state basically says that we are able to make changes to things that are not building standards, and generally that means administrative provisions. But even sometimes, they say, well, that's kind of a building standards, even though it's in the administrative chapter. But generally things like fees or references to fees or giving notices on properties that have unsafe conditions, permitting requirements, the expiration of permits, all of that stuff is generally considered administrative, and it is not a building standard. So building standards are more, the way we view it, are things where you can look at a building and measure it and say, okay, this door has to be 3 feet wide and not less than maybe 6'8" height. That's a building standard.
Well, part 1 of Title 24 is the administration. So it is a building standard, I would say. So I guess that's where it's different. So
Yeah.
you're calling it something else and putting it in there, but I don't see where it belongs in. I mean, it either belongs in the administration of the building standards or not.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anything else on that? Okay. I wanted to just mention briefly, Assembly Bill 130 was signed by the governor on June 30th of this year with the state budget. And that bill prohibits that we adopt any new building standards for residential construction unless they meet certain very specific conditions, such as home hardening for fire safety or emergency provisions that are needed for building standards. So with that, we are not proposing any new changes to residential building standards in this coming code, the 2025 code. So most of the changes that you're going to see, and I'll go over some of those, I'm not going to go over all of them. They're mostly cleanup language where we're taking an existing building standard and modifying the language to make it easier to understand and follow and enforce. So we might add a comma. Sometimes we change the word from, I don't know, and to also or something. So a lot of editorial changes like that. And they're not really changing the standard itself. They're changing the language so that people can understand it. And that helps designers, builders, and our own staff, quite frankly, understand these provisions better. So most of the changes that we have are in that category of editorial changes to make things easier to read. There are a few things that, and does anybody have any questions about Assembly Bill 130? That was formerly known as Assembly Bill I think it was, you remember, Joe? Was it like
I know
380?
It became 130,
Yeah, I can't remember the name. It had a different bill number.
308, I think.
And yeah, and the governor approved that on an emergency basis to go with the state budget and signed it on June 30th. So we can't really make any changes, and we weren't planning to do it anyway, to the building standards for residential construction to make it more restrictive or to add new requirements like we did in the previous code cycle for 2022. We had like several very, very important provisions for home hardening and for all electric buildings and things like that. Well, this time around, none of that.
Is it in perpetuity or is it does it have a sunset clause on AB 130?
Well, there's a lot of provisions in that bill. It's like 400 pages long. But the part that I'm referring to puts a halt on the code adoption cycle for residential units for 2 years. Because it's a 3-year code cycle, that's 6 years. So the next time we're going to be able to make a change to residential building standards is in 2032.
Thank you.
Yes.
So just to be clear, you're not, so if we put regulatory restrictions on the 2022, they're carried forward. So those are still in effect, even though they may be at odds with this new Assembly Bill 130.
They're not at odds with Assembly Bill 130. Assembly Bill 130 says you cannot add new things but you can keep anything that's already in effect as of now. I think the deadline was it October 1st or September 1st, something like that. I think it's October 1st. So if it's in place by October 1st, you can keep it, but you can't put anything new for 6 years.
Here's another consideration for county council. Does the 22 expire, that ordinance? Is it gone?
I have to tell you, I need to study Assembly Bill 130 to answer your question on how it interacts with the 2022, since I have not done that yet. I don't want to give you an incorrect
I
information.
get that. So what I'm proposing, or my thought is that the ordinance 20 for 2022 is gone. So anything you carry forward, you're putting in the new ordinance.
Let me just clarify something. It's not really gone. That ordinance is good through December 31, 2026.
Right, but on the January 1st, it's gone.
Yeah, but if
Now we put them all in this new ordinance.
if it's in force and effect by September of this year,
Okay, well, that's
we
something.
can keep it. So
That's something county
Yeah.
council probably should address, because you're carrying on things that were never approved to go on beyond that day. So the board of supervisors, in my mind, they said, hey, this is good until December 31st. So that's gone. So now all these that you're carrying forward, those are technically new amendments to the 2025 code. That's how I would view it.
they're not, well,
Well,
let's
it's
just call them new, but State Bill 130 allows them to stay if they're in effect this year. So anyway, we can follow up on
I
that.
haven't looked at State Bill 130 myself.
Like, you can actually go on California's state legislative website and find the Assembly bill analysis and Senate bill analysis that was done for all the versions of Assembly Bill 130 up till passage, and see the discussion of the various committees. And that's where I would look, and that's what I
Yeah.
recommend to you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that, though. We'll follow up with that. Okay, very good. I did want to do unless there's any final questions or comments on that. I did want to just do a very brief overview of the VCBC for any of you who are not that familiar with it, just so that you can kind of follow along and know how it's structured. So the VCBC, like I said, does not print everything that we enforce. This is only adopting the state codes by reference and printing those amended sections that we amended, that we adopted locally. So when you go through this code, you're going to see a lot of chapters that only have 1 or 2 sections, because that corresponding chapter in the state code is all there. But those 2 sections that we amended are the only 2 sections that we printed here. Okay, any questions? Yes.
there seems to be some confusion on, the IBC is in the California code. But the language in here says you're amending the IBC. So I don't, why are we amending? the
Okay,
IBC?
that's a very good question. There are some sections in the VCBC that instead of saying we're amending the California code, it says we're amending the international code. That's because that section or that code was not adopted by the state. So it's not a state code. It's a model code. A good example of that is the property maintenance code or the swimming pool and spa code. Both of those codes are not necessarily adopted by the state. So we're adopting the model codes directly. Okay? That's good, very good question. In some cases, there's like some administrative provisions that are in Division 2 of the building code. The state did not adopt those provisions. So we can't say we're modifying that state code section. It's not a state code section. They didn't adopt it. So we're adopting those sections in the international code. And so that's the distinction. Okay?
Seems like a lot of regulation.
But, I mean, we try to see, you know, yeah, I mean, yeah, it is a lot of regulation. Most of it comes from the state. So I would recommend, if you're interested in this, to get yourself involved in the state adoption, code adoption process.
There's enough work here.
Yeah, okay.
These 201 pages that the county piles on top of the thousands of pages of the state. And to be honest with you, the state doesn't come to our property and tell us what to do. The county does. So this is the important part here. So that's what I want to be involved in.
Very good. Okay, very good. Fair enough. Okay, so so that's Article 1. Article 2 are the amendments to the building code. So the amendments to the building code are we have several things. That one of the main things is that we made some changes to the administrative provisions. For example, the definition of produce stands. We had there were some people who wanted to use a produce stand to sell flowers, for example. And when we talked with others, we said, you know what, flowers are not really produce necessarily, but it's okay. So what we did is we changed the word produce to agricultural products. And as long as we're consistent with planning and with environmental health on the types of products that are sold at that produce stand, then it would qualify as an agricultural product stand now. And then we would exercise those building standards for that structure. It just makes it a little bit easier to enforce. Sometimes people want to sell honey, or they want to sell flowers, or they want to sell nuts. And so the question was, wait a minute, is that produce or not? So we wanted to clarify that a little bit. So we changed that sections like that. The other thing we did is we expanded the expiration period for building permit applications from 12 months to 18 months. We were having a lot of customers come in for extension of their building permit applications because they didn't have enough time to complete their grading, for example, or get their other clearances. And sometimes it was funding or personal reasons. And we just had a lot of applications for extensions. So we kind of felt like the public needs a little bit more time. And so we're proposing extending it from 12 months to 18 months before it actually expires. Okay. So those are the types of administrative changes. Sometimes we would just change the language to clarify something that sentence didn't really make a lot of sense. And we didn't catch it in the draft when we first published it in 2022, but we clarified those things. Also in Article 2, we moved, which by the way is the building code. Okay? We moved all the home hardening requirements or building hardening requirements that we had for tall slopes. The Board of Supervisors asked us in 2021, they said, we want some provisions to make buildings safer during large fires. And this is one of those provisions that we adopted in 2022 code. It says, if you are going to build right next to a tall slope, you're more susceptible to fire, like brush fire from that slope. So we're gonna ask you to do certain things to that building. Basically, we want you to keep it 30 feet away. Then you don't have to do anything to the building. But if you want to build closer than 30 feet, you have to protect those openings and the walls so that they've got some fire protection in case there's a fire on that slope. All of those provisions are carried over. They didn't really change, but because it's such an important item, I just wanted to mention that they're being carried over from the 2022 code. Okay. All right, the removal and relocation of former chapter 7A. This is huge. You're gonna see if you go to the marked up set, there's a lot of changes there. That's because we eliminated everything from chapter 7A and put it in another chapter. Chapter 7A was a requirement for having ignition resistant materials on the exterior of your building in case there's a fire nearby. This came from the state fire marshal. We just enforce in building and safety as part of the process to build the building. And all of those provisions are now located in a different code. The state fire marshal approved or adopted the wildland urban interface code, the WUI code for short. And that WUI code has those provisions that were moved from the building code chapter 7A into chapter 5 of the WUI code. Okay, so provisions didn't really change hardly at all. I mean, there may have been a few changes that are local to here, for example, retrofitting or the definition for what types of buildings need to be retrofitted. Those are in that chapter, but the provisions are carried over from the former chapter 7A. So I just wanted to mention that because it looks like a lot of changes in the code, but the changes aren't really local. They're state related. There's also some changes in appendix chapter J for grading. Most of those were editorial, just changing the language for, again, for permit issuance and inspections and things like that. Do you want to say anything about any of those?
I mean, that was just very minor, mostly carryovers, editorial edits, some clarification language, and then the biggest updates to stormwater requirements. The water quality room downstairs, like sport permit, so it's just staying in line with the water quality.
Right. Which were already enforced, and those are not new provisions.
No, it's
They
just updating it to our new requirements for the state water.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, the grading provisions, even though they're in the building code, the building official, quote unquote, is defined as the director of public works that enforces those provisions in appendix chapter J. Okay?
And
Yes.
is this the building official? for
No.
Public Works?
No.
Who is the building?
It would be a public works director, Craig.
Craig Strugglers?
Yes, so he's defined as
He's-
the building official for appendix J.
Now, county council, can we just define him or does he have to be certified like Ruben?
There's a health and safety code section, which escapes my mind right now, that authorizes us to appoint that director as the building official over grading responsibility. So that we've exercised our prerogatives under the health and safety code to do so.
So the health and safety code says that you can appoint a building official. The county can appoint any building official they want. And they don't need to be certified as a building official? How they get the police powers of a building official, but yet they're not certified like
No.
Ruben is as a building official?
I'm not prepared to debate with you
No, I'm not either. I'm posing
the
questions.
wisdom of the health and safety code, but it's within the parameters of the health and safety code, and we've done that.
Okay, so, yeah, I don't want to debate. I'm throwing out these questions so you can be ready, if, it's not agreed, the people don't agree with that. That's what I'm posing. I'm giving you a heads up that, it's very clear in the health and safety code that the building official needs to be certified. So to give somebody police powers who's not certified, never been trained in the building code. Ruben is a civil engineer and a certified building official. Angie is a certified engineer only. Mr. Strockaloo's is only a certified engineer. So they're missing half of, or the most of what's required in the health and safety code, which says they need to be certified. They need to have training on a continuous basis, 45 hours in the building code. So it's something that people have questions on. So this is a big deal for us, the people of Ventura County. So it needs to be looked into because it's not going to go away. We're not. I mean, the same thing here with the public, the plumbing and the health officer. The health officer has all its own health and safety laws that support whatever they want. I don't understand how they come here to. So.
Yeah, just to clarify one thing. So a lot of the certification and training that I need is for the rest of the code. And that building official for the grading chapter is only grading. So it's not like they have to be certified in learning structural or mechanical plumbing or any of that. It's just for the grading. So the only part that's being delegated to him to do is to enforce the provisions of that chapter. But there's a lot of things that we still do.
The grading relative to buildings or grading, any kind of grading.
This is any kind of grading.
So it's in here, which is relative to buildings,
It can, but not necessarily.
but they can go do agriculture also.
Well, it's grading.
Well, this is buildings. This is health and safety code for habitable buildings.
So, okay, so in a lot of jurisdictions, the grading ordinance is done separately from the building code.
This
And
is
here it's not. But this is the grading ordinance. This
It's
is like,
caused confusion. This is not the grading. This is the building.
we don't have a grading ordinance. This
There
is
you
part
go.
of, this is part, well, okay.
Bingo.
All right.
So
Yeah.
they're using, Public Works is using this building under Division 13 of the Health and Safety Code, which is habitable buildings and structures. They're enforcing grading for agriculture. And this farmers are not happy. So ag people are not happy. That's a bait and switch. That's like, and they're not even qualified to read the building code, so how would they know? He's the only one that can interpret the building code. They have no knowledge to interpret the building code, and they say, well, it's grading, and maybe they got it from you. I don't know. Maybe that's your determination is that they can go regulate grading for agriculture. But
They're regulating all the
people are-
grading.
People are against it.
Oh, okay. Thank you for letting us know. We'll definitely talk about that and make sure that we're on legal, strong legal.
Division 13,
Okay.
and safety code.
All right, thank you. Let's see, so grading. Let's see, was there anything else building code that anybody had questions about? There's a lot of stuff in there, but these are the main areas that were amended. All right, Article 3, the residential building code. The only thing I wanted to say about that is that we have no changes in the residential code because of Assembly Bill 130, but we are moving the provisions of Chapter R337 into, yeah, that's the old edition. So the latest one is this one here.
They're expensive.
Yeah, and the provisions of Chapter R337, which are all about home hardening for buildings in fire hazard zones, those all got moved again into Chapter 5 of the WUI code. So the WUI code now contains the formerly Chapter 7A and 337, both residential and non-residential, in Chapter 5 of the WUI code. Okay, that's the change there.
Is the Woolly Code a separate ordinance, or I'm confused? Where is the Woolly Code located? Is it in here?
No,
Is it
this
separate?
here is only those amendments that Building and Safety enforces that are in the WUI code. But the WUI code itself is, Joe, did you want to talk about that?
The WUI code, the California adopted, through their process, the international WUI code into the California
A
code.
Woolly. Oh, I thought it
Right,
was
so
Woolly,
we-
like Woolly Fire.
Yeah, so on that portion, that
WUI.
code, we locally do not have a choice. We are required by law to adopt that minimum code that they have. So the amendments that Ruben was talking
Got it.
about They're just specific amendments carrying forward what we had already. It's just moving it from one place in the code to another, but not really a change in what the code has been here in the county.
Perfect. WUI code.
W-
Wildland
WUI.
interface code.
Wildland urban interface. Yes. Very good. That's all I wanted to say about the residential code. And then articles 4 through 7, those are, we have no changes to any of those codes. Those are the electrical code, mechanical code, plumbing code, and the California Energy Code. So we're not proposing any changes to any of those codes. In Article 8 is the actual WUI code, which lists the amendments to that code that we were just talking about right now. And that is former CBC 7A, which I just talked about, and home hardening requirements for retrofitting existing buildings, which are carried over from VCBC 2022. Those will all be in Chapter 5 of the WUI. And then Articles 9 and 10, we have no changes to those. Articles 9 and 10 are the Historical Building Code and the California Existing Building Code. So we're not making any changes to those codes from what we had before. There may be some appendix chapters in those codes that change, and it happened with several codes. The appendix chapter number itself changed, but it's the same topic. So for example, straw bale construction, it used to be, I think, appendix chapter J or something like that. Now it's like BI. So it's just a different number of that appendix chapter, but we're keeping that chapter. And then Article 11, the Green Building Code, the only changes there, because you'll notice a lot of changes of things that were removed from that code relate to all electric buildings, which are no longer required in Ventura County. So we had originally adopted provisions in the Green Building Code to require all electric homes to be consistent with the requirements of the general plan. And those were repealed. There was a lawsuit in the city of Berkeley again, by the American Restaurants Association. And so by law, we had to repeal those sections and they're no longer in the code. So this will formally remove those sections from the printed 2025. Okay, and then Article 12 is the International Property Maintenance Code. We have no changes to that are currently being proposed. If there is something, I understand that maybe there was something that you were thinking about, Doug and Dean, to modify that for clarification on, what is it, graffiti?
Yeah, we have to get some input on that, whether they want to put that back in the code or not,
Okay,
because currently, right now, we have no
okay.
authority to address graffiti. So
So we have no authority because that was removed in the previous
if we
edition of the
want
code.
what we want to ask is, because if we put it back in, I'm sure it's going to come to us and we don't have staff to handle it. So,
Got it. Okay, well, let me know, because we need to.
yeah,
I need to take, when I take it to the board, it'll
Yep.
have, whatever.
I'm still waiting for Rob's
Okay.
thoughts.
And then the other code, so this is, by the way, so this is the International Property Maintenance Code that we were just talking about. We talked about this earlier, where this is not a California code. This is it is a model code. And we chose to adopt it because prior to this, we were using the 1997 Uniform Property Maintenance Code or something like that. That was like super dated. And there were a lot of things there that were not consistent with our other enforcement provisions in the building code, et cetera. So we adopted this in 2022. And so now we're going to be proposing to adopt the latest edition of this, which is the 2024. So these are, because it's a model code, it's a 2021 model code. We're adopting the 2024 model code. That's the property maintenance code. And then we're doing the same for the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code. This is something that the Building Standards Commission had adopted the last time around, but it was not really clear whether it was formally adopted. At least looking at the code, they referenced it, but it was, some people saying, well, they didn't really adopt it. So anyway, we clarified it. And, oh, it was the other way around. It didn't say that it was adopted, but when we spoke with Mia Marvelli from the Building Standards Commission, she was a commissioner there, or the director, Building Standards Commission. She said that we had adopted it, that we could enforce it. So just to be on the safe side, what we did is we adopted it by reference in the 2022 code. We're going to carry that over and adopt it again for the 2024 edition. Okay. So those are the two model codes that are referenced in the article. No changes to those. By the way, on the swimming pool and spa code, this applies, the way we adopted it is it only applies to residential swimming pools, everything associated with residential pools. Public pools like, community centers or public pools in the gym or in an apartment building, those are all regulated by EHD, Environmental Health Division. And they're using the provisions directly out of Chapter 31 of the Building Code. They're not using these provisions in this code. For the most part, I think they're about the same, but because those are still in the Building Code, they're just using those right from the Building Code, the state Building Code. Okay. And then the post-disaster recovery damage assessment, Article 15 and Article 16, which is limited density owner-built rural buildings. There are no changes to any of those. Those are just carried over from last code. And those have been in the code for a long time, by the way. They have not been changed in years. And I was going to say limited density owner-built rural dwellings. That's something that we don't really use a lot, but it's been there for a long time. And that is it has building standards that allow the construction of a building essentially in the middle of nowhere. If you have to have a parcel of, I think it's like 100 acres or larger, like a lodging, like a hunter's lodge or something like that, where you don't really have utilities and it's just like out in the middle of nowhere. It's, this provision here allows you to use Title 25 in the state government code to build that thing for limited density owner built dwellings. Okay. I mean, I went through a lot of stuff in just, a half hour maybe. Do you have any additional questions or comments or suggestions or any additional code amendments for those of you who are familiar with the code that say, well, you know what, I've always wondered about this. Is there something else that we need to address? Or is there something that you have interest in that we can discuss in more detail? We have a little bit of time. We can go into that specific code section and discuss it, review it, and decide what we want to do. Yes, Mike.
Is chapter 5, is that inserted in the fire code or is it a new standalone code?
It's a new standalone code. The WUI code, right? Yeah. So we'll have to purchase that code so that we can have access to that chapter.
So it's a standalone book. It's
Yes.
not inserted in the building code, like chapter 7.
Correct. Yeah. So instead of going to chapter 7A over here, you're just going to go to this other code and open it to chapter 5. But it's easier in the sense that you're going to go to chapter 5 regardless of whether it's residential or non-residential. The requirements are the same. But when you're plan checking something, for example, if it's a commercial building, you're using the building code. You're already over here. So you just go to chapter 7A. If you're checking a house, you're in the residential code and you're going over here, you go to section 337. So anyway.
It'll actually be easier because, you have residential code, building code, fire code, before those provisions were split between those three. And I'm not sure if there was another code, but it'll all be in one place.
Yeah. So one could say it's easier because it's all, both sets of requirements are in one place. But if you're plan checking to for a commercial building, you're already in that code checking everything else, and you just go to chapter 7A. And now you have to go to the other code
Right.
to see those provisions. But anyway, that's fine. Yeah. What else?
It's a policy question, Ruben.
Okay.
I'm not sure this is directly material to your presentation. With the wisdom that's gained through the recent fire events and how to, better protect and harden homes, how do you, as a building official, reach the people who aren't doing new construction or remodels to encourage them to adopt, better measures for their own homes, where you don't really have, a permit where you can hold over them and say, you need to do this?
Yes. That's an excellent question. And we've talked about that internally. I've had that conversation with Emosim and our new PIO about how to get that message out. There are a few people that from time to time will voluntarily do it, but because they're reading, they're reading an article about how a house was destroyed because it didn't have enclosed eaves, for example, or they had their vents and the vents were too open and they had embers flying into the attic and they lost their house. And so they read about stuff like that and they will voluntarily do it, but it's very, very few people that actually do it because it's costly and it's, it can be expensive depending on what your house needs to harden it. Most houses are already built with stucco and tile roofs and sometimes even enclosed eaves, but and they're probably fairly well protected. But if they do an addition or a remodel, they may have to do a little bit more just to get it up to code. If it's an older home, like home that was built in the 50s or 60s, chances are it needs a lot of stuff. And so the only time that folks generally want to do this stuff is when they're already doing another project, and they don't really want to do it even then. But if they're already spending, say, $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 on an addition or a remodel, and you ask them for another $5,000 to fix their vents, or maybe it's a little bit more, maybe it's like $10,000 or $15,000 to enclose their eaves, then they will do it because they have to do it. All right, well, on the agenda, this is the time just for questions and public feedback. I know you've been giving us a lot of good feedback and questions. Thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Are you a plan check? Plumbing, yeah. Is that still in the, I don't mean to address him, but is it still in the code for the larger buildings, 3,500 square feet, larger houses to require an engineer?
None of it requires an engineer.
No matter how big the house is?
No. As long as you got a licensed plumbing contractor that's going to be doing the work.
Right.
Okay, he'll put his name on the job that he's going to be doing. But if you change from that contractor to another contractor, now you got to resubmit plans. That contractor, his name on it.
And how about owner builders? They do their own plumbing?
If the owner is going to do the job himself or herself, correct, then yes, they can set you bring the plan with correct calculations. But the minute that you go outside of that, we're talking something.
Thank you, Keith. Hey, anybody else? So I did want to say a few things about the next public meeting. We have another public meeting this evening at 5:30. This is going to go to the board for a hearing, first hearing on September 30th. Okay, September 30th. And then the board hears the public, here's the presentation from staff, and they will give us direction whether they want to keep some of this stuff, whether they want to eliminate it all or eliminate some of it, or whatever they want to do. They will give direction to staff and make those changes in the interim after the first meeting and before the second meeting. The second meeting is in, Devin, do you remember the date of the second meeting? It's November, but I can't remember the actual date.
I don't know off the top of my head, so I'm sorry.
I think it's November 18th, but I'm not 100% sure of that. I'll have to double check that number. Just, it's published in our webpage and there's information about it. So if you're interested in attending, it's going to be in November. Once the second hearing is held, the decision is usually to adopt the VCBC, the 2025 VCBC, in whatever form it has at that point that the board approves. And then it becomes effective January 1, 2026. So we use that effective date for new applications submitted on that date. So we have an existing building permit application that was submitted in October or December. They are still under the 22 VCBC. Okay?
18.
The 18th, that's correct. Okay, November 18th. Thank you, Martha. So, yes.
Relative to that, how do the people find out which ones have been approved by the CBSC?
Okay, the California Building Standards Commission has published those codes. They're on their website. You can go on to the California Building Standards Commission and go into the triennial codes that are reflected for 2025. You'll have 2025, 22, 19, 16. Go to 2025, and that'll tell you all of the changes that are adopted by the state that were just published in July 1. So we didn't have a whole lot of time to get that and put everything together. So we're still doing some fine tuning, but yeah, those are available.
In retrospect, though, the 2022 is still not adopted in total at that website. So we don't know which ones ever got approved or didn't get approved. It's still saying Ventura County has been partially approved. What is the partial that's been approved and what hasn't been approved?
I gotta go back and check with them because it's just.
Well, the people need to know because you're enforcing all this stuff that's made up here locally. And yet we have no idea of which ones have actually been accepted for approval. So
Okay.
it's
So,
very
yeah.
difficult.
So what I was talking about on their website was the California codes. I wasn't talking about the Ventura code. Right now, this proposed Ventura code it's not there. We have not filed anything with the Building Standards Commission yet. We'll file that as we did last time, as we do every code cycle, right after it's been adopted by the board. So we file that with the Building Standards Commission, and now they have to be filed with the HCD, Housing Development,
Housing and
Community Development, for the residential stuff. So we file it, and then sometimes they have questions, and then we answer their questions, and then they come back, and we do a little bit of that. And that's probably what happened that last time. They asked us some questions, we gave them the answers, and then they never went up to their website to update it. That's all I can think.
It still says the 2022 on their website has not been approved.
Oh, okay.
It says it's been partially approved.
Okay.
So I mean, I understand that we have a few more months of the 2022, but we haven't even gotten it approved yet. So I don't understand how we're enforcing or what we're enforcing.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll follow up with that. I'll try to get them. I think what you're talking about is I think that they had a question about one of the express findings for one of the amendments that we had, which was the amendment for adopting Appendix AF or whatever it was for rodent control. And we didn't have the appropriate finding that was climatic, topographic, or geologic for that particular item. So we said, okay, we're not enforcing that. We haven't been enforcing that for 3 years because of that. But I think that's maybe what it was, because I don't remember they had a question about it. I was talking with Enrique Rodriguez from the Building Standards Commission about that, and I never followed up to go on their website to see what it said. But for now, if you want to see the California building codes, you can go on their website and they're printed. And if you want to see ours, you'll have to go to the local website here for Ventura County. You have it now, but it's also available so that you can look at it. There's still a little bit of fine tuning that needs to be done. We still have one more public meeting this evening. Somebody might say, hey, you guys should do this or change this word because it doesn't make any sense. And so, we take those things into consideration. And if it makes sense, we make the change. There were a few things that were recommended by the public that they're not, and you should all know this. We had a proposal to adopt provisions for hemp block construction, which is just it's not like concrete block, it's hemp block. So it's not necessarily proven necessarily. As far as I'm concerned, I haven't seen enough to tell me, yes, it's good. It's in the appendix chapter, so it's a voluntary thing. So we're not recommending that we adopt that chapter. First of all, because Assembly Bill 130 says we can't make any changes for residential construction anyway. So that was a recommended item from the public. We're not adopting. And then another one was for adopting Adobe, what they call cob construction, basically using Adobe with straw, for small buildings. That's an appendix chapter that is recommended that we adopt, but we're still not adopting it because this is seismic country. We have lots of very strong earthquakes in the region, and even though it's an appendix chapter that can be approved anywhere else in the country, that doesn't mean we have to approve it in Ventura County. We still don't have enough engineering analysis to say, oh yeah, it'll work fine. I mean, there's a lot of study that has been into it, and in some jurisdictions that have approved it, but I'm not aware that they've been approved for high seismic zone areas. And still, 130 doesn't allow us to make those adoptions anyway. So I just wanted to share that with everybody because that was a consideration.
So if it's not adopted, then the public can't propose it.
So
So I wouldn't be able to submit building permits and say I'm looking to build my house out of Adobe.
Okay,
Because
so-
it's not adopted, it means I can't.
Okay, hold on. So that's a very good question. So it's not so it was proposed that we adopt it so we can use that section. Because we're not adopting it, we don't use those provisions. But that doesn't mean you can't submit a request to use it for your particular house. We would treat those as an alternate method or alternate design. And there's a specific provision in the administrative chapter of the code that allows you to submit the necessary engineering and analysis. Sometimes we require tests or whatever is necessary to demonstrate that your proposed design and building is going to work, even though it's not addressed specifically in the code. Okay? It's a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie. I know you've been kind of following along with the agenda. Do you have any comments? Stephanie, by the way, she's our district manager here in Ventura. Today she's at Newberry Park. So she oversees the inspection group and the front counter group. And she's always involved with a lot of the discussions we have about codes. Do you have anything that you wanted to say or share, Stephanie?
Nothing except that the website for the California codes is codes.iccsafe.org. So I have it on the screen right here. You mentioned the 2025 codes. They're available for public view. So this is the location you would find that.
So that's if you want to buy one. Can you actually read it from there?
Yeah, you can read it. It's free of charge to view it. You just can't print or do anything like that. Print or share. I guess you could. Yeah, some of the things are restricted, but you can view it in an HTML format.
If you go on the building standards submission site, you can also see just like that in safe format. That's where I usually go. It's my shortcut. Thank you, Stephanie. But this is probably better because if you find what you need, you can just buy it from there. They're the publishers. Okay, very good. Thank you. Does anybody else have any final thoughts, questions, comments in the code enforcement section, public works, planning? No, nothing. Building safety, fire. Joe, did you want to say anything?
I have a question for my code enforcement people. Why hasn't California adopted something like the International Property Maintenance Code. I mean, you would think it would be a good thing to have.
Well, yeah, and when I mean, I've been in this business for 30-some years now, and initially, even back then, we had different other codes. You had the Uniform Code for the Abatement of Dangerous Building, Uniform Housing Code, Uniform blah, blah, blah. We didn't have one single International Property Maintenance Code. And so those have been evolving over decades. And when I first started, almost every jurisdiction had its own little property maintenance code internally. And what I'm seeing is more and more jurisdictions adopt the IPMC. Why California doesn't adopt it and allow it to be amended? I mean, because California is very different as far as, from the desert to the sea to the mountains, what property maintenance might have to be in there or not in there. For instance, we don't regulate the height of landscape grass or require that it be installed. Some jurisdictions do. And so I think we're headed that direction, but it's probably another decade off. But the IPMC is a huge improvement over what we've had in the past. So.
We used to use the 1998
Oh, God, yeah.
standard, right? Uniform standards.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things that, that is an improvement in the IPMC is that even though it was loosely noted in the old Uniform Housing Code, it was for residential habitable structures. We get out there and we see barns and sheds and commercial buildings that people have converted illegally into habitable structures. And so that IPMC overlays all of that on that structure as well. It doesn't have to be built or constructed as a residence for the housing code element of the IPMC to apply. So if you take your garage, or you take your shop, or you take a Connex box, or you take whatever and turn it into a residential structure, it's got to meet all the IPMC and all the housing code stuff. Yeah, they don't. So I mean, we have a lot of it out in the county where folks will convert a tough shed into habitable and rent it out for $1,000, $1,500 a month for cash with no receipts and no rental agreement.
Yeah, we also have a lot of people living in college. So, I mean, or tenants or whatever. So, I mean, you can put as much regulation on the people as you want, but you may have unintended consequences.
Well,
Too many people on the streets. So,
look up ghost ship fire. I just thought that.
do what?
Look up ghost ship fire. Tell me how you feel about.
Oh, in Oakland?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm well versed on it.
yeah, that's fine, but what are you working on the streets to get people off the streets? It's not your job.
Technically, no, but
Yeah,
we
there you
do.
go. That's fine. So I'm just giving.
Neither is putting out a
I'm
fire.
I'm
Nobody calls me to put out a fire. They call me
I'm just giving the people's opinion. I mean,
No, you're giving your opinion.
well, there's 15 government employees in here. I'm the only person that is representing the people in here. And so stand down, sir.
So, well, why don't you represent the people who are being taken advantage of in substandard housing and be putting at risk and being ripped off?
Nobody's being ripped off. Who's complaining about being ripped off? That's not what this is about. This isn't about being ripped off. It's about building standards.
Yeah, and it's about paying rent for a building that is safe.
Yeah, nobody says that. But as far as overregulating, that becomes a problem. So I'm saying Ventura County is overregulated. That's what I'm saying.
So, all right, I think we covered pretty much everything. No more questions, comments. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to come out here. Thank you for taking your time to come out and ask your questions. And we're gonna have another meeting this evening, and we'll see if anybody comes in, and we'll have it. If not, we're done. We'll see you all later. Thank you very much. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
I won't be here this evening. You go to.
Mike,
Thank you.
hey, how are you, Mike? Good to see you. How are you doing? Good. How have you been?
Good, good, just grinding away.
Yeah. How often are you over? Are you there full time?
Oh, Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, Wednesday, Thursday.
You guys go way back, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, that guy went to see.
I would go visit his desk a lot to ask questions. So I would go way back.
If he wants to see Rex, he should go to Glendale.
Oh, yeah.
Then they'll have a lot of them. Yeah, or LA City.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole region is.
Yeah. LA, RUPC.
Yeah.
Remember
Is
that?
that group still together?
I saw something the other day that had I think they are.
Yeah.
I don't know how often they meet. They used to meet like, once a month, but.
Because I was explaining to Drew that the hillside ordinance was kind of like invented by them. And then all the LA regional, they adopted the same one every time. They were all
The
locked up.
hillside ordinance?
Yeah,
Oh,
the stuff like we have in 16.